Okay, welcome to Monday morning. We're going to move on to section 9.5. All right, we're factoring. Nick, stop talking back there and pay attention. All right, 9.5, factoring. All right. On the board, I have 3x squared minus 9x. Now, we've factored that before, and we've taken out what we call a GCF, which is the greatest common factor. And I kept asking you guys a question, what do they both have in common? And you would tell me a 3, so we'll take that out, and they both have an x. And so we're able to factor it, 3x times x minus 3. And that's one way to factor. All right. Well then, in the second section that we had, we did FOIL. And maybe we did x plus 3 times x, let's say plus 5. All right, and when we used FOIL, we would get x squared plus 5x plus 3x plus 15. And that's using this method we called FOIL. First, outside, inside, and last. And then we took those two middle terms, 5 and 3, and we added them together to get x squared plus 8x plus 15. So look at that original problem. You see the 3 here and the 5? You multiply them together, and you get 15. But if you add them together, 3 plus 5, you get 8. All right? So, the reason why I'm telling you this is because now what we're going to do is we're going to take that trinomial as an example, x squared plus 3x plus 2, and what I want to do is I want to go from here and factor it. Okay? So what parenthesis times what parenthesis will give me x squared plus 3x plus 2. So let's take a look at that. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my two parentheses. Every problem we're going to have is going to look like this for factoring. All right. Well, you look at this x squared here. What times what is x squared? X and x. If I multiply x times x, I get x squared. What about 2? Don't worry about that middle term. Don't worry about the 3x just yet. What two numbers multiplied together will give you 2? Well, we don't have much of a choice. It's going to be 2 and 1. Okay? Just worry about the first term and the last term, and let's see about that middle term. Because we have a plus sign here and a plus sign here, these two signs are going to be plus. And how do you know if that's right? Use FOIL. See if we get what we started with. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 1 is 2. We add the middle terms. We have an x plus 2x. Yep, that gives me the 3x. And then plus 2. Now I'm going to give you a lot of examples of how to do this problem until it sinks in. I know some of you may be a little bit confused, but we're going to give you enough examples to where you're going to get the hang of it. Let's take another example. Let's take a squared plus 7a plus 10. Okay? We're going to make our two parentheses. Right? And then we're going to put an A and an A, because A times A is A squared. I want you to think, what two numbers multiplied together will give you 10? Right, 5 and 2. And if you add 5 and 2 together, doesn't that give you 7? So if I put 5 and 2, 5 times 2 is 10. Now, because these two terms are positive here, I'm going to put a plus and a plus. How do I know that's right? In your head, multiply the first two terms together using FOIL. A times A. All right, I get A squared. Multiply the last two terms together. 5 times 2. Good, I get 10. So I have A squared and I have 10. Are we going to get 7A? Well, look at the outside terms. That's 2A. And the inside terms, 5A. 2A plus 5A gives you 7A. And we've got it. So that's how you can always check. So if you want to multiply that back, you'll see that we're going to get what we started with, and that is A squared plus 7A plus 10. Now, as I'm doing these problems for you, like I said, I'm going to do a lot of examples here for you. This section is not real long, but we're going to cover this in 2 days. All right. So let's take another example. Let's take x squared. Now, it doesn't have to be x. Sometimes we're using a, sometimes we're using t, h, right? But we'll use x in this case. X squared plus 9x plus 14. Okay? Let's look at the 14. What two numbers multiplied together give you 14? 7 and 2. Well, look at that middle term. Look at 9x. If I multiply 7 times 2 together to get 14, 7 times 2 is 14, but 7 plus 2 is 9. So I'm going to make my parentheses. I have my x and x, and then we're going to put our 7 and 2. Because my two signs here are plus and plus, I'm going to put plus and plus. And now that's factored. And that's all you have to do. Okay? If you want to make sure that you have the right answer, then all you have to do is use FOIL, and you should get what you start with. If you don't, then you got to try again. All right? Let's try another one. What happens when I don't have a plus and a plus? Okay, for instance, what if I have x squared minus 4x plus 3? Okay, what happens there? Remember what I said, they are all going to factor using two parentheses. And this is not as hard as it looks. After you do a few of these, you'll get the hang of it. X and x. That gives me x squared. Now what about 3? what two numbers multiplied together will give you 3? 3 and 1. But look at that middle term. It's a -4, not a +4. So what that means is, why are they both negative? Why isn't one negative and one positive? Why are they both negative now? See this last term? That's a +3. Well, the signs have to be the same. If that last number is a positive number, if that's a +3, then the signs have to be the same, -3 and -1. Look, x times x is x squared. X times -1 is a -x. -3 times x, I'm using FOIL, is -3x. And -3 times -1, that's where we get the +3. But if you add these two middle terms together, first of all, I have the x squared, -1x, remember we don't need the 1 there, -x minus 3x gives you a -4x, and then you have the +3 at the end. So we get what we start with. So basically, this is a guess and check. Okay, let's do another one like that. Like I said before, I'm going to give you guys a lot of examples. What you can do, because this is recorded and it's on the website, what you can do is you can go home and you can go to your computer and go on my website and you can hear this lesson again. Or you could ask Mr. Denzer to start the recording again. Okay, so let's take another example. Let's take t squared minus 8t plus 12. What two numbers multiplied together? Well, first of all, let's put our two parentheses here. And then for t squared, it's going to be t and t. Because t times t is t squared. Now let's worry about the 12. Okay, what are my choices for 12? Well, I could have 1 and 12, or 12 and 1. 1 times 12 is 12, 12 times 1 is 12. It could be 12 and 1. Or it could be 2 and 6, or 6 and 2. Or it could be 4 and 3, and 3 and 4. All these numbers here that I've written down here, multiply those two together, and I will get 12. But I have to get 8 in the middle. I have to get a -8t in the middle. What two numbers can I use that are going to add up to 8? Well, 2 and 6, right? Or 6 and 2. So let's use 6 and 2 for 12. 6 times 2 is 12. But if I add those two numbers together, 6 and 2, I get 8 in the middle. And what are the signs going to be? Well, because this is a plus, the signs have to be the same. They're both plus, or they're both minus. In this case, they're both minus because that middle term is a negative. Okay? Are we sure that's the right answer? Are we sure it's not 4 and 3? Absolutely. And how do you know? If you go back and you use FOIL to check to see if you're right, you'll see that you'll get the same thing that we started with. If you don't, then you use the wrong two numbers. Okay, next one. We have m squared plus m minus 20. Oh boy, that last number. Now it's a minus number. All right. Let me erase these numbers up here, so we have a little bit of room. All right, I'm going to make my two parentheses. The first one, m and m, because m times m is m squared. I'm not going to worry about the middle term. All I'm looking for, what two numbers multiplied together will give me 20. Well, let's see. Could it be 1 and 20? Or 20 and 1? Or is it 2 and 10? 10 and 2? Is it 5 and 4? 4 and 5. And those are the only numbers that I can multiply to get 20. Which ones can I use? Well, 10 and 2, well, I could get 12 from 10 and 2 if I add the two together. 10 plus 2, if I subtract, I'll get 10 minus 2. That's not going to give me 1 for the middle one. Let's back up just a little bit. You have a minus 20 at the end. That means if we have a negative for your last term, one of these is going to be a minus, and one has to be a plus, because a minus times a plus gives you a negative. What two numbers will work? Now look at the middle term. I have to have some combination of the numbers here that's going to give me a 1m in the middle. Well, it looks like 5 and 4, doesn't it? Because 5 minus 4 gives me 1. So if I put a plus 5 here and a minus 4, I'll show you what I mean. M times m is m squared. I'm using FOIL. M times 5 is 5m. Now the inside terms, negative 4m. And the last term, well, there's my negative 4 times a positive 5, and that gives me a negative 20. I take the two middle terms, and I have 5m minus 4m is 1m, and then minus 20 at the end. So I get what I start with. But now I factored it with two parentheses. Right. And let's try one more. Let's try w squared plus 6w minus 16. Notice that last number is a negative. What that means is one is going to be a positive, one's going to be a negative. Okay? I know that for sure. Now, it doesn't matter if you put a minus and a plus for right now. I know the signs will be different because I have a negative 16, and I need a positive times a negative to get a negative 16. All right, well, we'll put the w here and the w here because I know w times w is w squared. What two numbers multiplied together will give me 16? Can it be 1 in 16? Am I able to get this 6 from 1 in 16? I don't think so. 16 plus 1 or 16 minus 1? No. And it's not going to be 16 and 1 either. So let's try 2 and 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Maybe it's 8 and 2. The other choice I have is 4 and 4, but I'm not going to be able to get a 6 out of 4 and 4. So I need to get a positive 6w for my middle term. Plus 8 minus 2. Now look, w times w, that's going to give me w squared. I have an 8 times a negative 2. That's going to give me negative 16. So I've already got my first term and last term. Now let's look at multiply the first two together, I get w squared. W times negative 2, that's negative 2w. And then 8 times w gives me 8w. And when I add these two together, I get 6w. So I have w squared plus 6w minus 16. All right, and that's how we factor. Now, I've covered about half the section so far, and that's where we're going to stop today. And for your homework, and Emily, please make sure that you write this on our assignment sheet back there today, if you would. But for our homework, I want you to do, on page 586, we're going to do problems 3 through 17, all. And then on the worksheet that Mr. Denzer will pass out to you, I want you to do problems, and this is practice worksheet B, 9.5, and I just want you to do problems 1 through 9. And that will give you some practice on factoring these binomials together. All right? Now, Mr. Johnson will be coming in, if he's not here already, and he can help you guys on an individual basis, or if you have any questions. All right? And your homework is going to be due tomorrow. Austin, make sure you do your homework tonight.